Well, how'd you like that, eh? You got just what you asked for? Here's the history of Italy in under 8 minutes. In the beginning, there was nothing but sea and sky where Italy now lies. And then out of the sea rose Sicily, Sardinia, Elba, and the mainland stretching from north to south. With no one in control, this landmass known as Italy became a bunch of small states ruled by kings and popes, foreign invaders and merchant republics. Then came the Romans. They grew their small village into a massive empire, ruling much of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. But after they fell, Italy fragmented again. A northern kingdom called Lombardy dominated with a strong Germanic influence, while a southern kingdom called Benevento spoke mostly Latin and looked to the Byzantine Empire as their inspiration. In between them were two small republics, Venice and Genoa, who built huge navies to dominate Mediterranean trade. And on the coast, the Pisans built the first European skyscrapers. But these 5 states would come together under the rule of the Holy Roman Empire. By the High Middle Ages, though, Italian merchants had grown wealthy enough to fund massive cathedral projects across the peninsula. The wealth also attracted the attention of outside powers who fought over control of Italy. Spain and France both launched successful invasions. And then, in the 13th century, Genoa and Venice formed an alliance to kick the Spanish out. This lasted until the French returned in the early 1400s under the ambitious Charles the Bold. But while the King of France dreamed of dominating all of Italy, a young Florentine family named the Medici were focused on making Florence the center of the Italian Renaissance. As bankers to the papacy, the Medici grew so rich that they effectively controlled Florence while remaining loyal subjects of the Holy Roman Emperor. Meanwhile, neighboring Genoa hired Leonardo da Vinci to help defend them against the growing power of Venice. And down south, Naples was just getting started under the rule of the Spanish monarchy. Soon, the whole of northern Italy was dominated by 3 trading republics, Venice, Genoa, and the rising power of the Ottoman Empire. While these 3 fought over control of the seas, a group of explorers from Genoa funded Christopher Columbus's voyage across the Atlantic, which began the European colonization of the Americas. But as the Ottomans grew more powerful, Italians began fearing for their independence. So in 1494, Venice, Milan, Florence, the Papal States, and the Kingdom of Naples formed the Holy League to expel the French from Italy. Although it failed, this alliance would become the foundation of a new political order that kept Italy independent for the next 200 years. During this time, the Spanish Habsburgs and French Bourbons competed for control over Naples, while the Medici continued to dominate Florence. Further north, the Swiss Confederacy grew from a small group of mountain villages into a formidable military force. But in the mid-1600s, control of northern Italy passed to the Austrians after a long struggle for dominance with the Holy Roman Emperor. Meanwhile, the Republic of Venice peaked as the richest and most powerful state in Italy, before declining as a naval power after losing a war against the Ottomans. Across the peninsula, the economy shifted from agriculture to manufacturing and trade during the Renaissance, leading to the emergence of powerful merchant classes in cities like Florence, Venice, Genoa, and Naples. And it was here in the south where the first signs of the Italian Enlightenment appeared in the late 1700s. But the rest of Italy would have to wait a bit longer for freedom, because in 1796, Napoleon invaded and rewrote the rules. He replaced the old regime with elected assemblies, introduced metric measurements, and established the Bank of Italy. But his occupation was unpopular with many Italians who preferred their old governments. When Napoleon left, they took their chance at independence, meeting at the Congress of Vienna. The great powers of Europe agreed that Italy should remain divided between Austria, France, Sardinia, the Papal States, and the new Kingdom of Naples. The Austrians would go on to dominate northern Italy for the next 100 years. Meanwhile, in the south, 2 revolutions in the 1840s led to the unification of Naples and Sicily. But this did not last long, because in the 1860s, a revolutionary leader named Garibaldi and his elite fighting force called the Red Shirts marched across southern Italy and brought the entire peninsula under the rule of the House of Savoy, based in Sardinia. Garibaldi's plan was to unite Italy under a single king, but he never anticipated that this new country would become a constitutional monarchy. After defeating Austria in a war of unification, The country was complete, but the revolution was not. As the old regime was replaced, there was a brief period of intense nationalism and economic growth. But this only made things worse for those who lost their power or saw little change in their daily lives. So in the 1910s, socialist and anarchist movements swept across Italy, especially in the industrial north, where the country's rapid urbanization created huge cities filled with poverty and crime. Meanwhile, the aging and conservative leadership class resisted any changes to the status quo. Then World War I broke out, which gave the Italian people a chance to define their new nation in the eyes of the world. Although Italy won, their victory came at a terrible cost. The war left millions of dead and a deep financial crisis. With little faith in their leaders, Italians took to the streets to protest the peace treaty, which led to the downfall of the monarchy and the rise of a fascist dictatorship. Mussolini used his newfound power to end Italy's parliamentary democracy and begin an aggressive expansionist campaign to conquer Ethiopia and bring the country out of the Great Depression. But Mussolini's dreams of creating a new Roman Empire collapsed when he joined Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. In 1943, the Grand Council voted to remove Mussolini from power. But by the time the Allies arrived, most Italians were still loyal to the fascist regime. It took another year for the country to be liberated. Italy was split into 4 zones of occupation, each governed by one of the victorious Allies. Then the U.S. sent aid to rebuild the devastated economy, while the UN sponsored a new constitution that established Italy as a democratic republic in 1948. Christian democracy became the dominant political party, but it soon faced off against a resurgent communist movement that threatened civil war. The standoff ended with the Compromise of 1960, which established a system of proportional representation and gave minor parties a greater voice in government. Then in the 1970s, the economic boom brought unprecedented prosperity to the country. By the 1980s, however, the economy slowed dramatically. Today, Italy is still a highly developed country with one of the world's largest economies and many of the greatest works of art and culture. Now, if you want to learn about the history of the Italian Renaissance, tell me in the comments. If you liked this video, go check out my previous videos. Otherwise, have a nice day.